What do you know? It's almost February. January has just disappeared.
Hard to believe, isn't it? Jeez.
And Michael Lach is here, director of the Harwich Community Trust.
Harwich Conservation
Harwich
Trust?
Conservation Trust.
Yes, yes.
And he's going to talk birds and bees.
Birds and the
true?
bees.
Wow.
It's hard to believe that season is almost upon us. The spring is around the corner. We're going to have a talk about native pollinators. The title of the talk is The Birds and the Bees. It's going to be led by the science coordinator for Mass Audubon's Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, all the way up north in Wellfleet. Many of you might have been to the world-class nature center there in Wellfleet, run by the Mass Audubon's Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary. Mark's going to come down and visit us here as part of our Winter Talk series. That's going to be, Saturday, January 30th, 2 p.m. right here in the community center. And it's a suggested donation of $5 per person. You know, it's interesting. He's going to talk about such topics as, honeybees actually aren't even native to this continent.
Is that right?
Yes, and there are a number of other important pollinator workhorses in our backyards: wasps, flies, hummingbirds, and a variety of other creatures.
Some of those must be native.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Okay.
yes. So,
I know those flies are.
oh, yeah. So he's going to talk about all the different pollinators that are really, inhabiting our landscapes around us. He's going to talk about some interesting native plants that you might find or even plant in your own backyard to attract native pollinators. So we think this is a really intriguing topic. And you'll see some of these photos here. I mean, look at that monarch, right? We know what a monarch butterfly looks like, intuitively. We see them, flip by gracefully every now and then. But they're just one of many, many different pollinators, other pollinators that we might not know about, but we'll certainly learn more about.
And they come from a bug.
Caterpillar, that's right. Yeah, the caterpillar feeds on a host plant. This one's a swallowtail feeding on butterfly weeds. So the caterpillar feeds on a host plant, in the monarch's case on milkweed primarily, and then pupates or turns into a chrysalis or cocoon, then transforms into a butterfly. I mean, that's a phenomenon in and of itself. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And of course, monarchs have this incredible migration life cycle as well, in a series of life stages and generations, actually. They can make their way all the way down to wintering grounds in Mexico.
Really?
It's incredible, yeah. So we'll learn more from Mark Faraday on Saturday, January 30th. And then, as part of our Winter Talk series coming up on February 6th, also 2 p.m. here at the Community Center, we'll be talking about Pleasant Bay.
Pleasant Bay, yes. Yeah. Now, what's Pleasant Bay going to be?
Well, Friends of Pleasant Bay, which is the nonprofit watershed group, since Pleasant Bay watershed spans the 4 towns of Harwich, Chatham, Orleans, and Brewster. Friends of Pleasant Bay has been funding and initiating a pioneering scientific research project, which HCT supports, in an effort to understand more about the marine creatures that inhabit the estuary, as well as understand a little bit more about the seafloor beneath the waves. And so Friends of Pleasant Bay has been working with the Center for Coastal Studies up in Provincetown. Mark Borelli, who's a coastal geologist and chair of the department, which is leading this study up there with the center, will be visiting us here all the way down south in Harwich to lead this presentation about the research conducted by he and his colleagues. Interesting data coming out about how Pleasant Bay is actually somewhat of a nursery of sorts for juvenile lobsters.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not. Who knew, right? They're also conducting a seal study to understand a little bit more about the gray seal population. We know that's been expanding over the years. And
seals have been growing.
Yes, yes. So that's going to be fascinating too, again, here on February 6th. So really great lineup. And then after that, we have Phil Burt, meteorologist with CapeCodWeather.net
Oh, okay,
coming
the
on
weather.
Saturday
That should be interesting.
Saturday the 13th at 2 p.m. also. Again, suggested donation of $5 per person. Really, the emphasis is on suggested donation. We're not going to turn anybody away.
Right.
But it does help us raise money to support our land-saving work. And it's fun. It's a fun afternoon to learn about these fascinating topics. So Phil's going to talk to us about the unique weather that Cape Cod experiences. Here we are surrounded.
We're getting more snow now.
Yes, yeah, and we're, here we are out in the Atlantic. So we get a little bit different weather pattern than, say, inland and in other parts of the East Coast. So, he's going to teach us really weather basics, 101, and also maybe, share a little bit more about some of these other far-flung phenomena that have an influence on us, like El Nino.
Like last year.
Yes, and somewhat this year. So that'll be really interesting.
You wonder sometimes whether, as a piece of property, the world is moving and we're going into a different phase.
Well, climate change is certainly something we need to pay attention to. And you saw that image of the hurricane there. So far we've been spared the force of hurricanes that the Cape has seen in the past. Let's say the 1938 hurricane.
Right.
Did have Hurricane Bob a little more recently in the late 80s.
Now we have
early
somebody
90s
who comes
maybe.
on and is very much into weather, and she says that we've never had a hurricane more than a 3.
Right, but it doesn't mean we're not going to
Yes,
be
that's
affected
true,
by
yeah.
something in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah.
So, understanding a little bit more about weather dynamics is important. And of course, the weather prediction models are fascinating science in and of themselves. So, Phil's going to share everything he knows, or some of what he knows, with us on February 13th. And then what we have coming up, because it was canceled due to weather.
The sharks. Right?
Yeah, the shark talk. So the snowstorm that most recently affected the Cape and really most of the eastern seaboard on January 23rd landed on the Cape just as we were about to have our great white shark talk. And so we postponed it, and it will be rescheduled for Saturday, February 20th.
Oh, okay.
Not at 2 p.m., but at noon. So be here at noon, be here earlier than noon, because we expect that to be a very popular presentation. You can see a photograph here of one of the white shark strandings that took place in the summer of 2015 on an outer Cape beach. She's calling in right there. I believe that's the co-founder and director of the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, Cynthia Wygren, who will be the lead presenter of the White Shark Talk on Saturday, February 20th at noon. There's a photo of gray seals, right? The primary prey species of the great white shark, and the main reason why these white sharks are showing up in greater numbers and more frequency off our Cape waters. And we hear about it in the radio, headlines, and on television, and obviously in our newspapers. It seems every week from spring through fall about different white sharks that are being tagged or sighted. Of course, it's affecting some of our beach recreation. And it's sort of an ongoing process where we're learning more and more about here on the Cape, and how we can coexist with these white sharks.
Now, is this primarily the beaches in Chatham, or is this beaches north of Chatham?
Usually it's the beaches facing the Atlantic. So it's the Atlantic side of Chatham, like Lighthouse Beach.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
It's the beaches to the north, Nauset Beach in New Orleans, Coast Guard Beach in Eastham, some of the Wellfleet beaches. So periodically in the summer of 2015, some of those beaches, they actually had to close for short periods of time, close to swimming because of shark sightings not far from where the public sections of those beaches are. So, our research and our information gathering continues to improve, led primarily by Dr. Greg Skolmel with the state's Division of Marine Fisheries. Cynthia Wygren of the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy worked closely with Dr. Greg Skolmel. So it's going to be a fascinating presentation. Again, noon here, Saturday, February 20th.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's a terrific lineup. And then on February 27th, we keep on going. We're going to talk about vernal pools.
Okay.
The time will switch back to 2 p.m. on Saturday, February 27th, but vernal pools are really a sensitive and vulnerable wildlife habitat that are...
They've been increasing in terms of what you found, much more than when you started.
That's right. When our volunteers at Harwich Conservation Trust first started identifying and certifying these vernal pools back in 2007, there were only 5 certified by the state in Harwich, and now there are more than 40, mostly on conservation land protected by the town or Harwich Conservation Trust. So, but it's important to identify and certify these pools so we know where they are in the landscape, and we can have an idea of which creatures are depending on them. Typically here, spotted salamander, wood frog, a really unique invertebrate called fairy shrimp, which can only exist in vernal pools. So,
Wow,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a great presentation. That's going to be led by Ian Ives, who's the director of the Long Pasture Wildlife Sanctuary owned by Mass Audubon in Barnstable. So he's been doing some interesting work on vernal pools. So Saturday, February 27th. You can find all of these on our website, harwichconservationtrust.org.
Good enough.
Yeah. And then owls.
Oh, that's right. The owls, they're in March, are they?
That's right.
Okay.
10th annual live owl program. 10th
That's
annual.
always very interesting.
Yeah. It's
Ron mentioned that to me. He said, I wish we could talk more about owls.
Ron's going to get his wish. So, yes, the owls are coming back. There's some great photographs taken by many of our all-star volunteers of the owls during these programs. The presentation is led by Mark and Marcia Wilson, shown there. Mark's holding a Eurasian eagle owl. That's the largest owl species by weight in the world.
Really?
And obviously, we have a snowy owl there with Marcia. Snowy owls occasionally will show up in greater numbers here on the Cape, as we experienced 2 winters ago. And people get an up-close and personal look at these owls, including other species. These owls all have permanent disabilities, which prevent their release back into the wild, but Marcia and Mark Wilson hold special federal and state permits. She's holding 2 spectacled owls there from South America. She will bring a spectacled owl too for folks to see and learn about. So they take care of these owls, and they carry these special state and federal permits which allow them to offer these unique close encounters of the owl kind for folks of all ages. It's not really recommended for ages under 5. But the cost of admission, we have kept the same since year 1, and that is ages 5 to 11, $5, and ages 12 and up, $10 each. So we try and really make sure it's a reasonable admission price so everybody can experience these amazing owls. Look at that red color phase screech owl with those ear tufts. Maybe a football on its end is a little bit bigger than, say, that screech owl. So small little owl, one of our native species, along with gray horned owl we'll find here on the Cape. Saw-whet owl, smallest species on the Cape. Barred owl, shown there, is also an owl species that is showing up on parts of the Cape, including in Harwich Port.
Really?
We have a confirmed
sighting,
yes, of the barred owl. Actually, not far from the Trust's largest preserve, the 66-acre Robert F. Smith Coldbrook Preserve, right there off Bank Street.
Bank Street. Is that
in
one
Harwich
of your
Port.
largest?
It is the largest, yes.
I thought that one out that you just bought at Pleasant Bay out that way.
Close. That one's almost 50 acres.
Is that
But
right?
yes, and so yeah, these owl programs are fantastic. They're going to take place at 3 different times: 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3 p.m. right in the gym in the community center. And people can reserve online at harwichconservationtrust.org.
Very good.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, are you finding new things out in Pleasant Bay, or as you continue to investigate your new purchase?
Yes, we're taking our land stewardship steps slowly and steadily with that acquisition, the 49-acre Pleasant Bay woodlands. The reason being is there was a identification potentially of some sensitive habitat areas, including vernal pools. So we're working through the state certification process. We'd like to understand where they are in the landscape before we lay out trails or public parking access. So we appreciate everybody's patience during that process.
That's good.
Meanwhile, we're undertaking those stewardship steps. We're still juggling at least 8 different land protection projects in different stages. So we've got to save the land while it's still here, and work on preserving the last great places. So we continue to do that while we take care stewardship-wise of the places we've already acquired. So
sounds like a good program.
yes, yes. So thanks for having me.
Well, it's always a pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks for being here.
We'll see you at the Owl Show.
Yes, you will.
All right.